Welcome everyone to this brief ICEF webinar where we will explain how you can reach international students via student recruitment agencies. In short, if you are looking to introduce your service, product, program, or destination to international students, or to those who are planning and preparing to study abroad, then this webinar will explain exactly how student recruitment agencies can help you reach this important and rapidly growing demographic. My name is Martijn van Veen. I'm the Vice President of Business Development here at ICEF. And in the first 10 minutes of the next half hour, I will walk you through some of the international student statistics, highlighting the global flow of international students worldwide. Then I will be interviewing Mark Lucas from IAE Global, one of the largest student recruitment agencies worldwide, about working with student recruitment agencies. And at the end of this webinar, I will explain where you can find and connect with the student recruitment agencies that correspond with your strategic objectives. At the start of this millennium, there were 2.1 million international students in higher education, a number that has grown to 5.6 million international students in the year 2018, which is a year-on-year increase of about 5.5%. A recent report by Dr. Rahul Chudaha calculates that the direct and indirect financial impact that international students in higher education generate worldwide amounted to a staggering $300 billion as of 2016. Of course, we cannot ignore the significant impact that COVID has on international student mobility, and history, however, has always shown a rapid recovery of our sector, crisis after crisis, and a fourth wave of international student mobility has been forecasted. It is estimated that we will reach 7 million international students by the year 2030, and this number relates only to students in higher education. Additional millions of students and youth travel overseas each year for language programs, cultural exchange, internships, and work and travel programs. As impressive as the size of the international student population may be, these numbers start to have some serious meaning when we look at the main destinations of these students. For an impression of where these students study, the destinations of these students, I'll use the 5.6 million students in 2018 as point of reference. Shown here are the top 15 international student destination countries, and they can roughly be divided into two groups. Group 1 includes Argentina, Turkey, Russia, United Arab Emirates, China, South Korea, and Japan. And what these study destinations have in common is that they have mainly been regional study destinations thus far. Industry specialists do expect that the appeal of these destinations will continue to grow even beyond their respective regions. Group 2 are those countries that attract students from literally all over the world. Countries that have been encouraging international student enrollments since many years and that are popular due to the historical quality of their education systems, with attractive programs and curricula in English or in another global language such as French and Spanish. By far, the largest study destination country remains the USA, with 987,000 international higher education students, and the UK and Australia come in second and third position, each welcoming nearly 500,000 international students in 2018. Canada attracts nearly 250,000 international students in higher education, and Germany, France, Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands are top destinations in continental Europe. On the other hand, the largest student origin countries are China and India. Nearly 1 million students come from China and more than 375,000 students from India, with South Korea and Vietnam each sending more than 100,000 students overseas in 2018. Completing the top 10 source countries are Brazil, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Nepal, and it's worth mentioning further countries that, based on these 2018 UNESCO statistics, have crossed the 50,000 mark of students studying overseas: Colombia, Morocco, Turkey, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Indonesia, and surely many more countries will follow in the near future. It goes without saying that understanding these student corridors, where students come from, where they decide to study, is of course very relevant for the geographic focus of your marketing activities. And for those marketing activities, it is important to understand that what we call the agency model. And with agency, I mean a student recruitment agency. Most international students, including their parents, use the services of a student recruitment agency based in their home country to make that very important, once-in-a-lifetime decision on where they want to study, which program, which institution, and everything that is involved. Schools and institutions that are actively recruiting international students have business partnerships with these overseas student recruitment agencies as one of their main tools to reach prospective international students and to generate enrollments. In most cases, for each enrollment that an agency generates, the institution will pay the agency a commission on the tuition fee. To showcase the important role that agencies play in international student recruitment, let's take a brief look at 4 of the world's most popular study destinations. In the US, 49% of institutions work with agencies, according to the National Association for College Admission Counseling. In Canada, 40 to 45% of international students are referred via agencies. 92% of British institutions work with agencies, and 3 out of 4 international students in Australia are referred via agencies. And these numbers are on the rise. A QS report of late last year highlighted that students are relying more on education agents for assistance with study abroad decisions. That assistance that agencies provide is not limited to the selection of the right program and the right school. Most agencies, if not all, are probably best described as a one-stop shop for everything and anything a student and their parents may need during and especially in preparation for their study abroad. And this makes these agencies ideal partners for all of you who wish to reach the international students and to reach those that are planning to study abroad. Think of flights and travel arrangements, banking solutions, international money transfer, prepaid cards, travel and health insurance, student accommodation, language training and testing, online learning programs, international SIM cards, student visa consultancy, information about destinations, tax-back services, software, hardware, shipping services, and I can go on. To understand how these agencies work and how you can work with these agencies in order to reach international students, I have invited a true industry specialist. Welcome, Mark Lucas, Senior Strategic Advisor at IAE Global, one of the largest student recruitment agencies worldwide with more than 80 offices across Asia Pacific and with supporting offices in major study destinations such as the USA, Canada, Australia, the UK, and New Zealand. Mark, thanks so much for joining us from Australia, which means it's a late evening for you. May I ask you for a brief introduction of yourself and IAE Global, please?
Thanks, Ben. The use of the word senior just means I'm old. So thanks. Look, good morning or good afternoon to most of you, I assume. Very briefly, my background is actually I started out as a teacher and then moved into running and setting up my own English language and business colleges in Australia back in the early 90s. And then mid-2000s, I actually sold the business and I decided I wanted to move into the agency side. So I actually went into partnership with OJ Kim from Edge House Inc., which was IAE EduNet in Korea. And we established IAE Global out of Hong Kong in 2006. So we expanded his model in Korea, and he already had offices in Australia and Canada and New Zealand at that stage, but we expanded then to most of the other key markets in the region. Looking at the industry now, obviously it's been the most challenging time I've ever seen in my more than 35 years in international education. So it's been a struggle for not just the institutions, but also obviously the agents who really depend on international student flow in order to generate income. So COVID-19 has seen a shake-up, but out of every disaster, there's obviously opportunity. So looking forward, we feel there's going to be a massive surge in the industry in the next few years. And the statistics actually show that while we've dropped back to 2019 or 18 levels, the pent-up demand will take us far beyond that in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, indeed, we see optimistic numbers, Mark. And can you maybe explain, Mark, why in international student recruitment, the use of agencies keeps increasing, whilst in many other sectors, the use of agencies or consultants is in decline, for example, due to increased availability of information and options on the internet?
I think if you ever tried to go onto a university website and work out what you want to study and how you're going to study it, you see the main reason for agencies. It's also a very, very large investment, sometimes several $100,000 that families are putting together to help their children find a future in education. So it's an emotional purchase. It's not one that's made like buying something through Amazon. If you're looking at higher education especially, it's also incredibly complex. The university entry levels are not fixed in stone. They're fluid, they change. Different markets will have different acceptance levels because of universities trying to adjust their internal numbers. So the agent's role is really to facilitate the process for the student and make it simpler and provide them with information that really gets them to what they want to study, where they want to study within the budget that they have to meet that.
Right. And as we both know, Mark, the majority of international students and families use agencies indeed. What is the average profile of these students? How do they compare to the students that decide on their study abroad programs via other channels?
Most of the students tend to come from fairly well-off or affluent families. Obviously, the decision to send your child overseas is fairly significant. So the parents are involved in the decision in many of the countries that we work out of. So for the whole process, the agent provides someone back in the home country that is there if things go wrong or if there are issues. The parents and the students like to have that relationship back in their own country. You also got to remember that, and sometimes things do go wrong with an educational experience. The chances of a student from India suing someone in the US is quite challenging and probably not going to happen, but the laws that support consumer rights in a lot of these countries are actually very, very strict. And the agency is actually the representative of the institution in those countries and is also seen as the front line for the students if something does go wrong or if they need help. So it's a very close relationship, and it's not just one that for the bigger and more sophisticated agencies, and that's the other reason you've seen it grow. The quality of agencies has been increasingly becoming more sophisticated as most agents actually use for their counselors and their staff international students who've returned home. So you're seeing well-educated people going online to recruit students, but they're doing it in a way that, although the internet and technology is now very important, in the end, it usually comes down to a face-to-face meeting to make those final decisions.
Right, and the internet, of course, is a great way to get some first information, where then the agency provides the actual information that it really needs to make that really important decision. Can you walk us through the student recruitment process from the day that there is a question and interest to the moment they maybe even complete their studies?
I think you picked up a really important point. Information's easy. And when I first started my college, the agent really had a very different power dynamic because effectively they had brochures. We used to send them brochures, and that was the information they had. This is pre-internet, so the students had to depend on the agents for the information. Information is not the critical thing now. That's out there. Most students have a lot of information. What they now want is a process that helps them work their way through that, assistance with the visa application, which for many countries is very, very challenging, and also just providing them with alternatives, because the problem now is that not only is there information out there, there's actually too much information. If you were to Google the word Bachelor of Business Sydney, there are hundreds and hundreds of options across a whole range of universities and private providers. So how do students work out which is the best one for them? So they can go by global ranking, which in countries like China is very, very important. Or for countries like India, it's more driven by what's the outcome they're looking for. Is it a pure educational one to come back to India? Or are they looking for a PR role? A lot of Indian students prefer to go and try and get at least permanent residence and spend several years working and getting experience in the country they study in. So there are different drivers by different markets, and the agencies are really experts at identifying what the student needs, why they need you, why they're using your services. And in most cases, don't forget, for the actual counselling side, agent services are free. They don't charge students. We have the relationship with the institution. Unless it's for other services, obviously, then our role changes. But they're quite clearly stated that we provide these services from a fee basis. So looking at the agent journey, our job is to, I guess, represent the institutions. We become an institution's overseas marketing arm in many ways. Our job is to profile them. And I know every institution I've ever met, including myself when I was running one, always says, but I've got the best institution, or I'm famous. Well, in reality, if you ask the average Chinese or Indian kid to name 10 universities, in the US or in Australia, they won't. They know the very, very famous ones. But in reality, the agents are actually the branding arm of the institutions or the products that they're promoting through their services. So agencies really become a payment in arrears marketing arm and recruitment arm of the institutions they work for. So most agencies are paid quite often a long time after the transaction is completed and the student has started. So all that pre-work is done by the agents on behalf of their partners, the institutions. Now, obviously, we do get marketing support and we get other types of support, but in reality, the commission is the main part of the income, which keeps the agency alive. So it's quite important that we have strong partnerships to create the business that we need to drive things forward.
What are the types of products and services that agencies are always looking to introduce to their students and to provide them access to?
In the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a fairly strong shift with a lot of agencies to seeing these as services we just provided for students, and the income wasn't really something we looked at, to with the growing impact of the aggregators in the agency side and the growing number of agents. And in fact, with the one industry that probably we create nearly all our own competitors, we send international students off who's used agencies, and most international agencies have actually probably been an international student who's gone, oh, I can do this too. So competition has been obviously driving down margins from the pure commission side, and the businesses have become far more sophisticated in looking at value adds. So insurance, you're never going to sell a student an inferior product. So that's the first thing. And one key thing I'd say to any service provider who is trying to make contact with agents is that just sending emails will not get through. And that's the significance of going to events at ICEF, because the personal relationships are what create that. I get literally hundreds of cold emails and cold calls from people trying to get me to sell products through IAE. We're pretty loyal, to be very honest. Once we find a product that we like and that suits our students, we prefer to stay with that. And we promote that as strongly. Now, if a student wants to have options, of course, they're the customer. You don't force students to do anything. You can lead them and provide them advice, but in the end, they should have options for choice as well. But an agent will only ever offer something that they feel will not come back to reflect on them. Because in the end, they'll be seen. If something is not correct, it's the agent who will wear the blame. Students very rarely complain to their institution or to their health insurer. They complain to the agent back in their home country. So. Right,
so that relationship between the agent and the service provider is, of course, extremely important.
Extremely important, yeah.
My final question for now, I'll get back to you later, but can you share some additional tips and tricks or do's and don'ts with our audience about working with overseas student recruitment agencies on top of the tips that you just gave?
I think you've got to I'll put on my institutional hat. So when I was going to events like ICEF, I would sum up people basically on the first 2 or 3 minutes about how they approached it. So if I was approached immediately and one of the first questions out their mouth was, "What's your commission?" Pretty well that was the end of the meeting for me. I'm not looking for someone who's just trying to push on commission. I'm looking for someone who actually will take my brand, not damage it, and provide me with quality students. So you've got to look at the agency as a partner. So my philosophy has always been, if you won't invite someone to your house, you don't need to work with them. There are tens of thousands of agents around the world. So my feeling is you've got to look at these people, talk to them. You're much better off finding out who the person is, what their business ethics are, what their long-term plans are, and how you can work with them to grow the business together.
That's great, Mark. So indeed, if any service provider is looking to reach international students, it means working with agencies, and working with agencies is relationship building. Thanks for that very detailed explanation of the important role that agencies play in the student recruitment process. And please, Mark, stay with us as we move to the last part of this webinar. Where to find these agencies? You talked about it already earlier. That is where ICEF comes in. Since nearly 3 decades, ICEF has been organizing the international student recruitment industry's main business-to-business networking event, ICEF Berlin, a global event where more than 800 agencies this year from all corners of the world come together to meet with education providers and to meet with providers of industry-relevant services and products. And here you are: accommodation, insurance, banking, travel, study destinations, online programs, all the categories that we discussed earlier in this webinar. The agencies at ICEF Berlin have all been carefully screened. For example, we require that they send us reference letters from schools that they work with. We check their legal documents, we check their industry knowledge, and we know how many students these agencies send and where to. You can find detailed information about ICEF Berlin on icef.com/Berlin, such as the event program, pricing, advertising, and sponsorship, the venue, event statistics, and testimonials and sponsors. And this year's ICEF Berlin will be hybrid, meaning participants can join us either in person or online. The event follows a solid networking format of back-to-back business meetings that you can schedule over 4 days, allowing you to meet with exactly those agencies, or perhaps even schools or other industry service providers that match your strategic objectives. You can further complete your schedule with high-quality industry seminars and presentations, and block certain time slots for small breaks in between. As an event participant, you can also download all the information and contact details of the other participants, allowing you to continue networking even after the event has ended. And whilst Berlin is the sector's largest annual get-together, we also organize a variety of virtual, hybrid, and in-person events throughout the year, whereby each event specifically focuses either on a student recruitment region or on a study destination or on a specific study level. An example of a student recruitment region-focused ICEF event is ICEF Virtual China. ICEF Miami focuses on the US and Canada as study destinations, and ICEF Virtual Secondary Education, for example, focus on a specific study level. In short, there's always one or more events that matches your geographic focus, growth objectives, and business criteria. Mark, one last question for you. As participant in a fair number of ICEF events, could you explain in a few words what our audience can expect at an ICEF event?
Very little sleep. So actually having been at the original ICEF Berlin in '95 as an institution, I'm actually really proud of what ICEF has become and how important it is to the industry. Most of the contacts I've made on both sides of the table have actually come through key ICEF events. And so for me, I think from an institutional point of view, my ability to go and visit 20 or 30 countries in literally a week is impossible. But so basically ICEF brought the world to me, or to Berlin, or to wherever I was. And I built my whole US market, which is now very significant, out of ICEF Miami. Again, I was one of the very early participants in that. China, again, was a huge one for us, and so was the original Singapore and ANZA. So when I look at these events, I think of them as a community that gets together. And that's what international education is. It's a community of like minds. And it's fantastic when you get together, because the relationships you often make there are through introductions. We're quite generous as an industry in sharing our leads and our friendships with other people we know. As an institution, I work with other institutions and we shared agent information. As an agent, I work with other agents that are my competitors, but also my friends. So it's one of the, I think it's one of the events that actually changed the way education has actually taken place internationally. And full kudos to Marcus and the team for what they've done, building ICEF to the incredible company it is today.
Thank you very much, Mark, for these very kind words. For timekeeping reasons, I'd now like to bring this webinar to a close with a very brief summary of just 2 bullet points. First, as the title mentions, reach international students via student recruitment agencies. And second, build these agency partnerships via ICEF events. I hope you all found this webinar useful, and I can imagine that you have questions or need further information. Feel free to email me at mvandeveen@icef.com or visit our website. Thanks again, Mark, for your valuable contribution to this webinar.
You're welcome.
At this late hour. And thank you all for your valuable 30 minutes with us. I hope to see you all at an ICEF event in the near future. Thank you very much.
We all do. Thanks, man. Cheers.